The day my family died, I called my parents first. My voice was shaking so hard I could barely say the words. They're gone. Maris, Ivy. Theo. All gone. There was a pause. Then my father's voice, calm, almost annoyed. Today is your sister's birthday. We can't come. I stood there in the hospital parking lot, holding my phone like a dead thing, staring at the sunset that didn't care my whole world had ended. While they cut the cake, I buried my wife and kids alone. 6 months later, the same people who didn't show up to say goodbye showed up on my doorstep because of one headline with my name in it. And when they read what I had done, panic swept through their perfect little lives. Before I share my story, I'd love to know you are here with me and listening to me. Comment hi below or tell me where you're from. I love hearing how far my story reached. Sometimes knowing someone is there makes all the difference. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. If stories like this touch your heart, please subscribe to our channel. It helps more people find the courage to speak their truth. My name is Atlin Mercer, and this is the story of how my family broke me and how I built something they could never destroy. The morning began with the sound of a violin. Ivy's bow scraped the same 3 notes over and over in the living room while the smell of pancakes drifted from the kitchen. Maris stood by the stove in one of my old t-shirts, shaping the batter into dolphins because Theo insisted dinosaurs were too boring today. The sunlight hit her hair just right, thin white ribbons through the kitchen window, and for a second I thought about taking a photo. I didn't. I figured we had more mornings like this ahead of us. Coffee's ready, she said, and I kissed her temple as I passed. Her shoulder smelled like maple syrup and sea air. Theo climbed onto his chair, showing me the tiny dinosaur band-aid on his wrist, the one I put there last night after he fell running in the yard. Ivy's giggle floated in from the next room off. The call came from Sergeant Elena Ruiz, Charleston PD. Her voice was calm, rehearsed, the kind of tone people use when they're trained to deliver tragedy. Mr. Mercer, there's been an accident at King and Calhoun. A semi from Blue Ridge Freight ran the light. My pen slipped from my hand. Is everyone? I'm so sorry, sir. They were pronounced at the scene. By the time I reached MUSC Health, my hands were shaking so violently I couldn't sign the forms. The corridor to the morgue smelled of disinfectant and metal lights humming with mechanical sympathy. They let me see them one by one. First Maris, her hair still damp from that morning's shower. Then Ivy, small and still her fingers curled like she was still holding the bow. And Theo, his band-aid still bright green against his wrist. Each sheet they lifted was another piece of me stripped away. The truck driver walked away with scratches. His blood alcohol was 3 times the limit at 8 in the morning. I stumbled outside to the parking lot, the phone heavy in my hand. I called my parents in Mount Pleasant. Mom answered, laughter echoing behind her. Mom, I said, my throat breaking, they're gone. Maris, Ivy, Theo, they're all gone. There was silence. Then Dad's voice, calm and deliberate. Today is Sable's birthday. We can't come. I blinked, sure I'd misheard. Dad, they're dead. The funeral. You know how your sister gets when plans change, he said. Mom murmured something soft behind him, not disagreeing, just letting the silence confirm it. I stared at my palm. The dinosaur band-aid stuck there from carrying Theo the night before. My knees buckled, the asphalt blurred. Somewhere far away I heard people laughing, probably leaving the hospital cafe. My children were lying on metal tables inside, and my parents couldn't be bothered to leave a party. The wind from the harbor blew cold across the lot, smelling faintly of salt and diesel. I looked at my watch, 8:17. The numbers glowed like a brand. The time everything stopped. The time the first fracture appeared in what I used to call family. And in that stillness I understood something I hadn't dared to admit all my life: they never truly saw me. The following Saturday, Charleston felt too bright for mourning. The Cathedral of St. John the Baptist rose out of the street like something carved for eternity, its bells tolling over the city. I arrived early, carrying the weight of 3 funerals that should never have shared the same day. Inside, the air was cool and sharp with incense. 3 caskets waited at the front Maris's of dark walnut, polished and simple, the kind she would have chosen. Ivy's had tiny musical notes hand-painted along the side. Theo's was smaller, painted with green dinosaurs by the funeral director's daughter after she heard his story. I touched each one, tracing their edges until my fingers trembled. Maris's parents had flown from Boise limping, but determined, their hands gripping mine like lifelines. Her father's voice cracked when he whispered, "You're not alone, son." But when I looked over the pews, one side was packed friends, colleagues, neighbors, and the other side stood silent and empty. The 3 front row seats on the left had name cards taped neatly, reserved for Graham Mercer, Celeste Mercer, Sable Mercer Riggs. I checked my watch again. Noon. The bells began to ring. The seats stayed empty. As the priest began the service, my mind wandered back through years of small surrenders I used to call love. The scholarship I gave up so Sable could spend a gap year in Europe finding herself. The 3 months of unpaid leave I took to care for Mom after her hip surgery while Sable was too busy. The way she announced her first pregnancy during my wedding toast, soaking up all the attention while Maris smiled politely. Every family dinner, every holiday somehow revolved around Sable's latest drama, and I played the role of the reliable son, the one who didn't make trouble, who kept quiet, who never kept score. Good sons don't keep score, Mom always said. I never realized she meant good sons disappear. When the priest's voice rose in prayer, I looked again at the empty chairs. Sunlight poured through the stained glass, spilling color over the wood. I thought of all the times I had mistaken their silence for peace, their distance for dignity. Now it was just absence, loud and echoing. After the final hymn, I stayed behind as the crowd thinned. The funeral director brought over the guest book, and I signed my name under 100 others. My pen hesitated before the line marked, "Family of the Deceased." I wanted to write something else, maybe the truth, but instead I wrote Atlan Mercer and closed the book. I stepped outside, the noon sun blinding. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Reflex made me pull it out. The screen lit with a notification. Sable Mercer Riggs posted a new photo. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. There she was, standing at the Seabrook Island Club, champagne in hand, surrounded by friends. The caption read, "Best birthday ever. So grateful for everyone who made today special." The timestamp matched the exact minute the church bells had rung for my wife and children. I scrolled further. Another post, her friend tagging the Mercer family celebrating together. Everyone smiling, everyone complete, everyone except me. I froze on the steps of the cathedral. The sound of traffic on Broad Street faded, replaced by the slow echo of the bells still vibrating through the air. 3 caskets behind me, 3 empty seats inside, and one perfect picture of my family pretending nothing had happened. For the first time in 32 years, anger felt cleaner than grief. The kind that doesn't burn, it clarifies. That night back home, I sat at the dining table alone. Ivy's violin rested on the chair beside me, one string snapped. Theo's dinosaurs lined the window ledge like tiny sentries guarding what was left. Outside, Charleston's harbor lights blinked against the dark. I opened my laptop to plan the payments for 3 funerals, 3 headstones, 3 plots of earth. But the only image that stayed in my head was that photo of Sable's party. Their smiles, wide glasses raised high like the world hadn't just swallowed mine whole. And as the clock ticked past midnight, I realized the real funeral that day wasn't for Maris and the kids. It was for the illusion that I still had a family. Rain drifted sideways across the window of the funeral home as I sat across from the director. He slid the folder toward me, pages crisp, numbers neat and merciless. $30,000. 3 caskets, 3 burial plots, the hearse, the flowers, the music. Every line was a small wound. The smallest casket, Theo's, was somehow the most expensive. A handwritten note said, "Custom hand-painted finish." I felt my throat close. He said softly, "We do offer payment plans." Payment plans, I repeated as if I were buying a car, not burying my family. Outside, puddles gathered beneath the streetlight. I told him I'd figure it out. That night I called the insurance company. I expected the usual process forms waiting. Instead, the woman on the line paused and said, "Mr. Mercer, we'd like to schedule an in-person meeting regarding your policy. It's substantial." That word hung in the air like static. Substantial. I hung up without asking how much. When I got home, the house smelled like rain and stale coffee. The breakfast dishes still waited in the sink, pancake syrup crusted along the edge of a plate. Ivy's violin sat open, her last song still on the stand. Maris's coffee mug was beside the machine, a faint lipstick mark still on the rim. The silence pressed down like water. The phone rang. "Mom." I stared at the screen before answering. "Sweetheart, how are you holding up?" Her voice was syrupy, too smooth. "I'm surviving," I said. She sighed, the kind of sigh that comes before a pitch. "Your father and I were talking. Sable and Colton have been struggling with IVF. You know, family helps family. Maybe you could share some of the insurance money." Michael was generous, wasn't he? It was like being slapped with words. "Mom, my family is dead. And you're asking for money. Oh, don't be dramatic. You have plenty now. Think about your sister. She deserves a chance to have what you lost." The sound that came out of me wasn't even a laugh, it was something hollow. I hung up before I could say what I wanted to. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I hadn't locked it. Sable stood there in a cream coat, Colton behind her with the smug look of a man doing mental math. "Hey, big brother," she said, stepping in before I invited her. "We're worried about you. All alone in this big house." "You weren't worried 3 weeks ago," I said. "That's not fair," she protested. "We had plans." She wandered through the living room, touching the piano, the couch, her gaze calculating. Colton stopped near the kitchen, running his hand along the granite counter. "Nice place," he said. "$500,000 easy," Sable smiled. "It's too big for one person. You could sell it to us, family discount. 300,000 cash deal, quick close." My stomach turned. "Market's 500. She shrugged. "We'd be doing you a favor. Less upkeep, less pain." I stepped between them in the hallway. "You need to leave." "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped. "We're trying to help. You're trying to scavenge." Her smile cracked. "Mom and Dad were right about you. You've become ungrateful." I pointed to the door. "Family doesn't sell grief at a discount." They left Colton pausing just long enough to lift his phone and take photos of the house. I watched their car roll away through the rain, taillights blurring red. When the night settled again, I sat at the table staring at the bill from the funeral home, the ink bleeding slightly from my damp hands. The phone buzzed once more, a text from an unknown number. "They're planning an intervention this Sunday at your parents' place. They called it helping you think clearly. Don't go alone." The message was signed, "Hawkins next door." Outside, thunder rolled across the bay. Inside, the lights flickered once and steadied. I folded the bill in half, then again until the numbers disappeared. 3 weeks after the funeral, I found myself wandering the cereal aisle of the Harris Teeter on East Bay Street. The shelves were too bright, too clean. I picked up the box of Frosted Flakes Ivy loved, even though no one would eat it now. Some habits survive longer than people. I was halfway to the register when I heard her voice. "Oh my God, everyone, this is my brother I told you about, Sable." She was dressed for brunch, surrounded by 3 friends with identical smiles. They turned curious, predatory. "This is him," she said, gesturing to me like I was an exhibit. "He's hoarding millions while we're trying to start a family." My stomach dropped. "Stop this, Sable." But she only grew louder. "Tell them Atlin about the $5 million insurance payout. Tell them how you abandoned your family." People stopped. A mother pulled her kids closer. A young guy raised his phone, recording. I tried to walk away, but she followed, voice rising with practiced grief. "He's unstable. We're considering getting him evaluated. It's heartbreaking, really." Something in me broke loose. I turned, met her eyes, and said quietly, "You mean the parents who skipped the funeral?" The words cut through the store like a blade. For a moment, silence. Then her expression hardened. "He's delusional," she told the crowd, her hand trembling theatrically. I left the cart where it was and walked out. The doors slid open, the light outside almost white. Someone followed me, camera still up, filming the back of my head as I reached my car. The sunlight glared off the hood like glass. By evening, the video was everywhere: Facebook groups, neighborhood forums, local gossip pages. The headline read, "Tragic Widower Lashes Out at Family in Grocery Store Breakdown." Comments poured in: sympathy for Sable, pity for me, strangers diagnosing me from their phones. 2 days later, a message appeared from Mom, family meeting our house Sunday 2 p.m. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The last sentence sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't an invitation. It was a command. When Sunday came, I drove to Mount Pleasant anyway. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see if any part of them could still be human. The living room was full, uncles, aunts, cousins I hadn't seen in years. And in the corner, a woman I didn't recognize holding a clipboard. Dad stood up. "This is Dr. Foster. She's here to help us facilitate a conversation." I laughed once sharp. "A therapist." "Really?" Mom pressed a tissue to her cheek. "We're worried about you, sweetheart. You're not handling your grief well. You're mismanaging things." Dr. Foster cleared her throat. "Your family is concerned about your judgment. They think you may need assistance making sound financial decisions." "So this isn't about grief," I said. "It's about control." Sable sniffled from the couch. "We just want what's best for you. You've been isolating yourself, ignoring us, hiding money." I stared at her. "You mean the money that doesn't belong to you?" Dad's voice boomed. "Watch your tone. Family helps family. That phrase again. The same one they used to drain me dry my whole life." Dr. Foster tried to speak, but I cut her off. "If this is an intervention, it's for the wrong person." I grabbed my coat. Mom called after me, voice trembling now. "If you walk out that door, we'll have no choice but to take legal steps to protect you from yourself." I turned at the doorway. "Do what you need to do." When I got home, my inbox pinged. A new email subject line glowing on the screen. "Your late wife's estate planning. Urgent meeting required." It was from a man named Andre Park. Inside the message, just one line: "She prepared something for you long before the accident." For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift inside me. Not hope exactly, but a direction. A faint pulse in the silence, like the first heartbeat after drowning. The elevator doors opened onto the 12th floor of Park and Duval. The building smelled faintly of cedar and polish, the kind of quiet that only exists where the law and money meet. Andre Park greeted me in a navy suit, silver glasses, and the kind of calm that makes other people trust him instantly. His handshake was steady, not pitying. "Mr. Mercer," he said, "please have a seat. I've been expecting you." His office was warm, walnut walls, golden light, the opposite of every cold room I'd been in since the hospital. He placed a file on the table and opened it like a door. "Your wife came to see me 8 years ago," he said. "Right after your daughter, Ivy, was born. She wanted to make sure you'd be protected no matter what happened." Inside the folder were 3 documents, each stamped with a different company logo. 3 separate policies, he explained. Total value $5 million. My breath caught. "She did this without telling me she wanted you to live, not worry," he said. He handed me a small silver USB drive. "There's something she left for you." He turned the screen toward me and pressed play. The video opened in the same room we were sitting in, same lamp, same light. Maris sat in front of the camera, wearing a white blouse, her hair pulled back. She looked calm, certain. "If you're watching this," she said, her voice steady but soft, "it means I'm gone. Please know this. I planned this, so you'll never have to beg love from those who never earned it." I felt the chair creak beneath me as the sound of my own breathing filled the room. Andre waited until I could meet his eyes again. "There's also a letter." He slid an envelope across the desk. My name was written in her handwriting, elegant, looping, familiar. "I open, failed to stand by you, forfeits every claim. Use what's left to build something that matters. Build a life that honors love, not blood." The ink blurred halfway through because of tears I didn't feel falling. Andre spoke quietly. She designed each policy with protective clauses, ethical provisions that bar any relative who failed to show moral support from claiming funds. If they try, I'm required to release a warning letter and all attached evidence. He paused, letting it sink in. Your wife predicted every move they'd make. I stared at the folder again. How could she know she worked for Sentinel Life as a data consultant years ago? She helped design their layered beneficiary system. That's why these contracts exist. Each one has a record clause. If you're targeted or defamed, the company is obligated to release her recorded testimony publicly. It hit me then she hadn't just left money, she'd left armor. Andre leaned back. There's one more thing. The CEO of Sentinel Life, Naomi Caldwell, requested to meet you in person. She says there's something you should see. 2 days later, I flew to Atlanta. Naomi's office overlooked the city, modern glass and steel sunlight cutting across her desk. She greeted me with a kind of solemn respect. Your wife foresaw what would happen, she said. She was extraordinary. She opened a tablet and pressed play again. Maris appeared, filmed in the same white blouse, same calm tone. If you're seeing this through Naomi, it means everything is settled. Don't waste your life surviving. Build something that outlives both of us. Call it the Beacon Project. Help those who were left standing in the wreckage like you will be. When the video ended, the screen went black except for 3 words. Mercer Beacon Foundation. That night in the hotel room, I sat beside the window, watching the lights of the freeway blur into ribbons. For the first time in months, grief wasn't a void, it was fuel. I used $3 million to establish the foundation dedicated to families shattered by DUI crashes. The remaining 2 went into a trust to sustain it. By the end of spring, the paperwork was approved, the first grants were ready, and my name appeared on no publicity lists. I didn't want fame. I wanted purpose. But as I signed the final document, I had the uneasy sense that this quiet victory would not stay quiet for long. People always return when they smell redemption and money. 6 months after the funeral, Charleston had learned my name again, but this time for a different reason. The Mercer Beacon Foundation was no longer just an idea. The office sat near the waterfront, sunlight flooding through glass walls. Every morning the phone rang with stories that felt too familiar, mothers, fathers, siblings asking for help after a DUI tore through their lives. I told them we'll cover the funeral costs. You're not alone. We filmed nothing. We posted nothing. But others did. A woman in North Carolina wrote about us online. A stranger paid for my husband's burial. They called themselves the Beacon. Then another story, then a third. By July, donations began pouring in from people I'd never met. We started small, 12 families, then 50, then 200. Ivy's violin program gave scholarships to kids who'd lost parents in accidents. Theo's Dino library traveled between elementary schools, bringing books and laughter where grief had lived too long. Each project felt like stitching light into darkness. One morning, a journalist from the Charleston Ledger called. She'd heard whispers about a widower turning tragedy into hope. A week later, the headline spread across the paper. Low Country Widower Turns, $5 into Hope. My photo ran beside the title, me standing with families at a memorial event. I didn't even know it had been taken. I turned off my phone that day. I didn't want congratulations. When I finally turned it back on that night, the screen filled with notifications, 80 messages, dozens of missed calls, 47 from Dad, 12 from Mom, 83 from Sable. They started sweet, so proud of you. Then shifted, we should talk about the foundation. Then curdled, you're mismanaging family resources. Finally, we have rights too. 2 days later, they appeared at my front door with cheap flowers and baseball caps that read, Mercer Beacon Family. The neighbors stared. Look who's finally doing something meaningful. Sable chirped, handing me the bouquet as if nothing had happened. You need to leave, I said. Mom frowned. Don't be cold, Atlin. We're family. Dad's tone hardened. You built this with family money. That means family oversight. Before I could respond, Mrs. Hawkins, my elderly neighbor, came out with her dog. He told you to leave, she said. Don't make me call the police. Mom gasped. We're trying to help him. He's not well. Minutes later, police lights flashed across the street. The same Sergeant Elena Ruiz stepped out of the cruiser. She looked from them to me and shook her head. Mr. Mercer is fine, she said flatly. If you don't leave now, I'll file a trespassing report. They retreated, murmuring about betrayal and shame, their caps drooping with rain. The next morning, a certified letter arrived, legal stationery, embossed seal. Notice of intent petition for family oversight of Mercer Beacon Foundation. The attached claim accused me of emotional instability, demanding joint management of the trust to ensure transparency. I took the letter straight to Andre Park. He read it once, then twice, lips twitching like he already knew the script. She really did plan everything he said. He opened a drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope stamped with a red wax seal. Maris's signature looped across it. She left this for you, Andre said, and instructions open only if they try to claim the foundation. I stared at the envelope. The wax felt cool under my thumb. Andre smiled faintly. We'll open it when they walk through that door, and I think that moment's coming soon. By that afternoon, a new video was circulating online. Someone had spliced together two clips, one half of Sable raising her champagne at her birthday, the other half of me standing before 3 caskets at the church. The caption read, "Family left him alone, then claimed his light." The tide turned overnight. The same crowd that once called me unstable now called me the man who built hope from ash. But Graham and Celeste weren't done. Pride is harder to bury than guilt. A week later, I received an email signed by my father himself. Let's meet. Face to face. We'll resolve this with dignity. The meeting was set for Thursday afternoon at Park and Duval. When I confirmed the appointment, Andre looked at me carefully. You sure you're ready? I nodded. They think they're coming to claim something that belongs to them. I closed my hand around the sealed envelope. But what they don't know is that the real judge is the woman they spent her whole life underestimating. The wind outside shifted, the first drops of rain tapping against the glass, and I knew whatever was about to happen next would end everything that began at 8:17 that morning in March. The sky over Charleston went slate gray by mid-afternoon wind pushing against the glass like a warning. On the 18th floor, the air tasted like paper and polish. When I walked in, they were already seated, Graham, Celeste, Sable Colton, and their attorney in a pinstripe suit that made him look like a lectern. Andre sat beside me, calm as a tide pool, the sealed envelope on the table, red wax stamped with Maris's looping signature. Per the insurance conditions and will, Andre said evenly, I'm obligated to present certain materials when family members request control over assets or reputation. I didn't speak. The room didn't need my words yet. Andre broke the seal. He unfolded a single sheet written in Maris's hand and read aloud. If you're hearing this, it means someone chose to trade honor for money. Anyone who did not stand with my husband at our funeral will never have a claim to what I left. Celeste made a small sound, the kind you make when you stub a truth you'd rather not see. Graham's palm hit the table. Fabrication. There's no proof we weren't there. Andre lifted the remote. The screen on the wall blinked to life. The camera panned the nave of the cathedral, sound of the priest rising like a tide. We gathered to remember Maris Ivy and Theo Mercer. The shot settled on the left aisle, 3 seats in the front row with neat white cards reserved for Graham Mercer, reserved for Celeste Mercer, reserved for Sable Mercer Riggs. Empty, flooded with colored light from the stained glass. That's the truth you can't delete, I said, and my voice surprised me with its steadiness. Sable's breath caught. I couldn't handle it that day, she whispered. I was under so much pressure. Andre pressed play on a second file. Maris again recorded at Sentinel Life, same white blouse, same stillness. If they ever come for what was never theirs, she said, remind them legacy belongs to those who stayed. The sentence landed in the center of the table and sat there like a bright coin. Graham leaned forward. Maris didn't understand the dynamics of this family. Andre opened a thin folder and slid copies across. Loan records $37,000 in transfers from Atlan over 8 years. Emails from Ms. Mercer Riggs requesting funds for travel. Wire confirmations for your anniversary cruise from Atlan's account. This is the dynamic. Their attorney cleared his throat. We're here to discuss transparency in the foundation. A joint board ensures integrity. Andre's eyes didn't flicker. The foundation bylaws exclude anyone who abandoned its founder during his loss from any position permanently. Any attempt to override that clause triggers public release of these materials. Silence has different temperatures. This one was ice. Out the windows, the harbor was the color of old pewter. In the glass, I saw all of us reflected me upright, them folded in on themselves, as if a weight had dropped and no one warned them to bend their knees. A knock sounded at the door. The receptionist stepped in and handed me my phone. "This just came through," she whispered. On the screen, a new edit was spreading across town. Sable, laughing with a champagne flute in hand, split beside the cathedral's 3 empty chairs, and the priest's voice about remembrance. The headline read, "She partied, he buried." By evening, the dominoes fell. Sable's marketing firm issued a statement ending her contract for values violations. Graham was quietly removed from the church board. Celeste's charity circle rescinded her gala invite. Comments turned sharp and then turned away. The same community that once nodded along to their version now stared at the footage and shut their doors. I stood. "Family isn't about who shares your blood," I said, not looking at anyone in particular. "It's about who showed up when the world ended." Andre closed the folder. Meeting adjourned. When I reached the hall, the wind hit the windows again, a low, steady hum. In the glass, I caught one last image, my shadow tall there, small and bent. Then the elevator doors slid shut and the building exhaled behind me. A year later, Charleston smelled like magnolia and wet stone. Morning light draped itself across the markers in Magnolia Cemetery, and the river carried gulls inland one by one like white commas. I walked the path with a paper cup of coffee steam trailing in the cool air. Maris's name, then Ivy's, then Theo's. I read the day's mail to them like I always did notes from families we'd helped, a crayon drawing from a boy who got a violin through Ivy's program, a photo of a book cart painted bright green for Theo's traveling library. Life had not returned to normal. It had found a new shape and learned how to stand. The Mercer Beacon Foundation operated in 12 states now. We'd crossed 2,000 families served, and still the list on my desk never stopped growing. The people who steadied me in the worst year, Maris's mother from Boise, my friend Nate who handled logistics when I forgot to eat, Mrs. Hawkins who told the truth on the sidewalk, now sat on our advisory board. I sold the old house and moved into a small place 2 streets from the cemetery. The quiet there was the good kind. The community called themselves Beacon Families. The kids who won scholarships started calling themselves Beacon Bears. It stuck. One afternoon, Andre sent over a padded envelope. Inside was a letter on stationery I recognized from Sable's kitchen, the ink smudged in places. "I don't expect forgiveness." She wrote, "I just want you to know I finally understand what I threw away. My daughter Sophia has Ivy's eyes. I wish she could have met her cousins." I sat with the letter a long time. Then I wrote back on foundation letterhead. "I forgive you not because you earned it, but because I won't carry anger any farther. Forgiveness isn't return. Love Sophia in the ways you couldn't love Ivy and Theo. That's all that matters now." I slipped a photo into the envelope, our last Christmas together, the 3 of them in soft flannel. On the back I wrote, "For Sophia, so she knows they once existed." Andre mailed it with a note instructing his office not to accept further replies. A week later, I met him at the bank and signed papers establishing a $50,000 college fund in Sophia's name. Anonymous, locked until she turned 18 and only for tuition. Andre looked at me as the pen left the page. After everything Maris told me once, I said, "Revenge is temporary. Grace lasts." The foundation's annual gala filled the city auditorium with faces I knew from files in living rooms and gravesides. The governor spoke, but the loudest moments were quiet applause breaking like surf for a mother who stood only because strangers had carried her. When it was my turn, I kept it simple. We don't build beacons out of success, I said into the soft lights. We build them out of pain that refuse to stay silent. On my way out, I paused by the glass doors. Across the street, under a street lamp, I saw Graham and Celeste and Sable. They stood just outside the glow hands, empty. Tickets were pricey, but that wasn't what kept them out. I nodded once to no one and kept walking. The next morning, I brought a bound report to the cemetery. The cover stamped 1,000 families helped last year's tally, a mile marker on a longer road. I told Maris about the new counseling partner in Savannah, the expansion of Ivy's violin to 3 more cities, the way Theo's library had become a bus painted with bright animals and kids chased it down like an ice cream truck. Your plan worked perfectly, I said, setting the book on the grass while the wind moved through the live oaks. It sounded like an answer. When I left the river, light caught the windows of our building across the water and turned the beacon logo into a small sun. I thought about blood and presence, about how easy it is to confuse one with the other. Family, I've learned, is not a birthright. It's a practice. When everything broke, they chose a party. When I stood back up, I chose a boundary, and then I chose grace. Some doors stay closed because the house inside is finally safe. Some justice doesn't need a gavel. It needs a light aimed straight at 3 empty chairs. Then you turn and you walk toward the people who showed up and you keep the light burning.